I just want to ask you, so talk about what do you think is the greatest challenge for M&A going forward?
I think the financial markets are going to be dominated, as they have been for the last 5 years, by the central banks. And the Fed, maybe as early as today, will start the tapering of its quantitative easing policy. But tapering is still, they're still buying. Even if they start to taper and reduce their purchases by $5 or $10 billion a month, they'll still be buying $75 billion of Treasury securities and mortgage-backed securities for the foreseeable future. So, and what the Fed is doing pales by comparison to what the Japanese central bank is doing. The European Union has recently gotten into the game, the ECB. So, between the three central banks are adding monetary stimulus into the financial markets of extraordinary proportions, rivaled in recent modern economic history. And so that's the most influential thing going on in the financial markets. Is influencing valuations and therefore influencing the pace of M&A and the actual consummation of transactions and how they're financed. And I think what you've seen is that because the suspicion is wide that the Fed and the ECB and the Central Bank of Japan are having such an extraordinary influence on asset valuations that it's making everyone nervous. It's putting real caution in the winds. The normal things that drive M&A are still driving M&A, but overriding all are the influence of the central banks. And so, I think as the Fed starts to withdraw its monetary stimulus and the markets react to that, I think after it settles down, whatever that period may be, a year or so from now, you'll either see a huge boom in M&A or a real tapering off of M&A.
So are you saying during the period of going from 85 to 75, maybe going even lower, that is the uncertain period?
Yeah.
But after, once they settle this whole thing, it'll go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision makers, when you're buying a business, you're making a commitment as to what you think the future is.
Yes.
And here, in this kind of environment, with the central banks engaging in extraordinary monetary stimulus, what they're communicating is we're not so sure about the future. And we feel like the central banks, need to be playing a determinative factor in the outcome. And so as they withdraw, that's a positive sign, actually, that they think the economy is healed and that private capital markets can do it on their own. But there have been such a significant influence in the markets that as they withdraw from the markets, I think people are going to want to see how the markets behave once they're out.
The Fed tricked the market a few times this year.
Well, I don't think that. I think there's been a lot of jawboning on both sides. I think the Fed is, one of the things the Fed is trying to do is communicate, make sure that the market isn't surprised by what it's doing. So it's doing a lot of talking in advance about the direction it's going. And I think in the May timeframe, when people expected they would start the taper and didn't, there was some disappointment in the markets on some sides, and on other sides, people thought, no. I mean, the economy remains weak. But I think all the signs lately are that unemployment is down, employment is up. GDP growth looks strong. It's been a boom year for leveraged loan and high yield debt. So the private capital markets are strong. And so I think all the signs are there for them that it's time for them to go. But at the end of the day, they're going to go at their own pace and based on what they conclude is the
So
right.
We don't know.
We
basically.
don't know.
Yeah. So also, I want to ask you, out of Washington, midterm election is less than 1 year away. I know.
Hard to know.
We all roll
Five
our
or
eyes.
5 or 6 things are going to happen between here and there that will affect public opinion, that will affect the outcome. But I think Affordable Care Act has been, the cause célèbre of the Republican Party for the last 4 years, ever since it was passed, and it dominates their agenda. It didn't work as a platform to run on in 2012 in the presidential election. Whether it works as a platform to run on, the repeal of Obamacare works as a platform to run on in 2014, I don't know. I think the counterbalance to that is, the irresponsibility of having shut the government down, and I think that largely is on the backs of the Republicans. So, but I think we don't know today what's going to determine voter behavior in November of 2014.
Do you have a preliminary reading on potential policies or regulation?
That's the interesting thing. I think that the debate at the party level, at the national level, has really been about the future of government spending. And with the Republicans sort of taking a hard line towards entitlement reform, and Democrats talking about the need for stimulus, for greater stimulus, which means greater spending or more targeted spending. I think it's very hard to run on a negative agenda. It's very hard to run on cut stuff and win the voters' hearts and minds. So I think it's incumbent upon the Republicans now to really come up with an agenda, other than, we want to cut entitlement spending. There really has to be a why. Why do you want to cut entitlement spending? Why do you want to bring the budget into surplus? I just don't think they've articulated a positive agenda enough yet. And I think that similarly for the Democrats, I don't think they've got, they haven't articulated a coherent spending agenda or infrastructure investment agenda. I think there were rallying things in the past, in my lifetime, that really transformed the American economy that the government did. Whether it was the national highway system, which really created a boom in the post-war era for the auto industry, which became one of the most important manufacturing industries in America. But that was in part a function of being able to connect cities by highways and letting people get in their cars and see America. And similarly with the space program drove the development of the electronics industry in the United States. Miniaturization, transistorization, semiconductors, all of that. And that has had spin-offs all the way to the internet and Google. I think the government plays an important role in economic development, and neither the Democrats or the Republicans have really articulated what they see the role of government being. The Republicans are just simply saying we want the government out of our lives, and the Democrats are saying the economy is too weak and people are too dependent and need the support of the state to meet basic needs. So, to me, the politics right now is sort of just depressing, because I really don't see any national figure articulating a real vision for the future of the country.
Ted Cruz?
Yeah, he's got a vision.
Some people think. Well, Republican, you seem to have a very fair and balanced view, and then...
Terrible, that's so unusual.
I just want to ask you, Republicans, they're trying to broaden their base, reach out to minority, women. How do you think they're doing on that front?
Terribly.
Okay.
Terribly. I mean, I think you can't have a negative, you got to have a positive view on immigration to be, a national party of all Americans. And right now they don't have a view on immigration. They're blocking passage of the act that was passed in the Senate. They're blocking it in the House, and it's a disgrace. We have 12 million people living illegally in this country. It's crazy, just crazy.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for your time.